There are people who can sit in silence and feel nothing. And then there are people who sit in silence and feel everything. Not one thought, but a chain of thoughts. One thought triggers another and another until silence is no longer silence. It becomes a space where the mind starts generating its own reality. And the strange part is, nothing outside is happening, but inside, everything is.
Most people misunderstand what it means to think too much. They assume it is intelligence, or awareness, or deep thinking, but often it is none of these. It is repetition without resolution, a mind trying to solve something that was never meant to be solved through thinking alone. And this is where most people get it wrong. They try to stop the thoughts, but the real issue is not the thoughts themselves. It is what the mind believes those thoughts are responsible for controlling.
A single moment is never stored once. It is replayed, rewritten, reconstructed. A conversation becomes a system. What did that tone mean? Was that awkward? Should I have said something else? And even after an answer appears, the mind refuses to close it because it is not searching for truth. It is searching for certainty. And certainty does not exist in memory. Only interpretation does. If you think too much, you don't remember the past. You rebuild it until it no longer feels like something that happened, but something still unresolved. At this point, it seems like this is just overthinking, a habit of analyzing too much, a mind that refuses to let go. But it is actually something deeper, because overthinking is not about thoughts. It is about what happens when the mind does not feel safe without them. People who think too much rarely experience neutral reality. Nothing is just happening. Everything means something. A short reply becomes distance. A pause becomes rejection. A change in tone becomes hidden intention. But reality is often not expressive. Sometimes it is neutral, and that neutrality feels uncomfortable. So the mind fills the gap. It creates meaning, even when none exists, because meaning feels safer than uncertainty. They don't only live in the past, they also live in futures that do not exist yet. Entire conversations, entire conflicts, entire outcomes, all rehearsed inside the mind. And even when nothing is happening, the body reacts as if it is. Stress, tension, unease. Because imagination does not feel imaginary to the nervous system. It feels real. And sometimes, this is not just thinking. It feels like being trapped inside your own mind, a place where nothing is wrong, but nothing feels light either. Even when nothing is happening, the body feels like something is. And the more you try to stop thinking, the more active the mind becomes. Not because it is broken, but because it has learned a pattern. Stay active. Stay alert. Stay prepared, even when there is nothing to prepare for. Even small decisions feel heavy. What to say, when to reply, how to respond. Because every option feels like it has hidden consequences. So the mind delays, replays, rechecks, until the moment passes, and action becomes harder than thought. You've probably experienced this, a full conversation in your head that never happened in reality. Arguments, explanations, defenses, and when you return to the present, nothing has changed. But emotionally, you already lived it. Thinking too much is not a thinking problem. It is a control reflex, a mental habit built around uncertainty. The mind does not trust unknown outcomes, so it creates explanations, even when none are needed. But thoughts are not instructions. They are not warnings. They are not truths. They are just mental activity. And not all activity requires attention. And the strange part is, most people never realize they are living inside this loop. A loop of replay, a loop of prediction, a loop of interpretation. And even after understanding it, the mind does not immediately stop. It continues anyway, automatically, quietly, as if thinking is something it learned and never learned how to turn off. And maybe the real question is not, why do I think too much? But what part of me believes every thought deserves to be solved? Because the mind was never meant to be silent, but it was never meant to be obeyed either. And somewhere in between, there is a space where thoughts still appear, but they no longer control you. But not every mind responds to the world with thought. Some minds respond by withdrawal. Crowds feel heavy. Noise feels overwhelming. People feel like too much. Not because they hate the world, but because the world feels like too much to process. And that leads to the next story. People who can't stand crowded places, and what their mind is protecting them from.